In this lesson we're going to be analysing a chord progression based on the changes of the famous jazz standard All the Things You Are. Now I've been getting a lot of requests for this kind of lesson, like what kind of vocabulary do I need to have, or what kind of material can I be using to solo over some changes of some jazz standards. So I thought, if you want to get into this stuff, you've really got to understand how harmony works and where these chords are coming from and where they're going and what the appropriate chord scales are. So I thought I would start by using this progression that's based again on All the Things You Are, a very famous jazz standard. And the best way to start is to really analyze the progression so we can see exactly what's going on harmonically. Alright, so what I'm going to do is write out the progression for you, and I'm going to talk about the chords kind of as I get to them. I'm going to play the progression on the piano so you can kind of hear the harmony, and then we're going to look at some of the chord scales and start getting into some of the material to play over this stuff. Alright, there's going to be a document available for you to download, so you won't have to kind of really squint your eyes to see what I'm writing here, because it's going to be available for you to download so you can sit with it by yourself and really kind of get stuck into it. Alright, let's look at the first chord. It's an F minor 7. Second chord is a B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7. I'll just write out the whole progression first. D flat major 7, G7, C major 7, 2 bars. C minor 7, F minor 7, B flat 7, E flat major 7. And I recommend to do this yourself, every time you're kind of going to work on a song, it really helps you internalize and memorize the progression if you actually write it out and analyze it like this, so you can really see what's going on. It's not ideal to just kind of flick through the real book and just point to a tune and start playing over it. You really want to get inside these changes and see exactly what's going on. And of course, you want to be really memorizing this stuff, so it comes a lot more fluent and you're not kind of bogged down by looking at the lead sheet all the time. Next chord here, A flat major 7, D7, G major 7. We'll start to see some patterns as well that are very common in jazz standards, so I'm going to point some of this stuff out too for you. A minor 7, D7, G major 7, F sharp minor 7, B7, E major 7, C7 flat 9, flat 13. Now you might see that chord written a few different ways. I've seen it written as a C augmented chord or a C7 flat 9, but I'm going to put in both tensions here, flat 9, flat 13, so when I get into the chord scale you can kind of see what's going on. Next we have a F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, same as the first 4 bars here, or 5 bars, sorry, D flat major 7, just going to erase that, D flat minor 7, a modal interchange chord, we're going to get into that stuff too. B diminished, we're going to get into some diminished harmony. I'm going to talk about functional diminished harmony and the different chord scales that are involved in that, and kind of dispel some myths about diminished harmony. Of course, over any dominant chord or a diminished chord you have several choices, but I'm going to really look at the bebop way of approaching stuff here and kind of get into the appropriate functional chord scales. Last 4 bars, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7, and the last chord C7 flat 9, flat 13. Now the first thing I'm going to point out is the movement of the root of the chord. Now it's very common in jazz music, or in any kind of music really, that the root motion or the bass motion moves in cycle 5. Now if you understand your key signatures and how the cycle of fifth works, then you're going to kind of see this stuff is going to jump out to you immediately. And because of the chord quality, or the quality of the chords, it's going to kind of dictate to you what key we're actually in. So when we look at the first 4 bars, we have an F going to a B flat, to an E flat, to an A flat major 7. So what I'm looking for now is the movement of the dominant chord to the 1 chord. So this E flat 7 going to A flat major 7, it's such a strong sound, you know, if I play it on the keyboard here. There's your E flat 7 going to your A flat major 7. You know, that really sounds like a rested chord, that A flat there. So this tells me that this has to be in the key of A flat major. So the first chord is a 6 minor 7. I'm going to use Roman numerals here. The B flat minor 7 in the key of A flat is a 2 minor 7. Then we have our 5 7 to 1. Now, very strong progression. It just kind of wants to move away from that dominant chord and resolve to the 1 chord. I'm not going to get too much into harmony here. That's for another lesson. But it's just very important that you understand these patterns. You know, a very common movement is the 2 5 1. You know, that we have the B flat minor 7 going to E flat 7 going to A flat major 7. That's our 2 5 1, which tells us without a doubt that we're in a key of A flat here. You know, you have to think of the chords like having some kind of energy. You know, these chords have a lot of energy and they're pulling us all the way from the beginning. We're getting pulled right to this A flat major 7. So if I play these chords on the piano, there's an F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7. You know, it sounds like we've landed now, we've landed at home. And then the next chord is a D flat major 7. Again, we can analyze it in the key of A flat major. It's the 4 chord, but we're kind of moving away from that strong 1 chord now. And our next chord is a G7, which is a tritone away. And then that 7 chord resolving. So now this sounds like our 1. So there's D flat major 7, 4 major 7. And now this G7. Let's play it again. Sounds like a 5 to 1 to me, so 5 7 1. So now we're in a new key. Next, we're going to look at the progression again. You can see it's moving in cycle 5, C to F to B flat to E flat, and we can see the quality of chords. We can immediately pick out a 2 5 1 here, the F minor 7, B flat 7, E flat major 7. So it's exactly the same as the first 5 bars really, but it's just in a different key, you know. So 6 minor 7, 2 minor 7, 5 7, 1 major 7. Now 4 major 7 is A flat major, and again we're moving a tritone away as we did with the D flat major 7 to the G7. Now we're moving A flat major 7 to a D7, and then that resolves down a perfect fifth to the G major 7. So again we've changed keys, and it definitely tells me we're in a key of G major here. So it's 5 7 to 1. Next bars, it's a 2 minor 7, 5 7 1 in G major. And then again the next 3 bars we can see it's another 2 5 1, but this time in the key of E major. So F sharp minor 7, again 2 minor 7, B7 5 7, 1 major 7, and then we get to this dominant chord with these altered tensions, the flat 9 and the flat 13. Now if I play this chord, you can really hear it's full of tension. It's loaded with tension here. We've got the flat 9 and the sharp 9 and the flat 13. So it's the way we analyze that is we've got to see where it's going. So it's going to an F minor. So again, the dominant chord's moving down a perfect fifth, which is a very strong sound. And at a first glance, it tells me that we're in the key of F minor here. It's a 5 going to 1, you know, 1 minor. But when we continue looking at the progression, we'll see that it's the same as the first 4 bars, and we're actually in the key of A flat major again. So this F minor 7 is a 6 minor 7, 2 minor 7, 5, 7, 1 major 7. And the way we're going to analyze that C7, it's actually a 5-7 of 6. Now that's called a secondary dominant. I'm going to do another lesson later on secondary dominants and all the chord scales, but for now I'm just going to talk about this one chord. It's 5-7 of 6, and when we're done with all this, we're going to look at the chord scale to go with it. I'm going to show you how to build it and hear how it sounds. So 5-7 of 6 going to 6, 2 5 1 in the key of A flat. Now we have 4 major 7 again. Now we have another interesting chord. I'll do the C minor first. It's a 3 minor 7. And you know, we're obviously not changing key here, but obviously the D flat minor 7 isn't from A flat major. So what this is, it's a modal interchange chord. We're borrowing it from a different mode. We're actually borrowing it from the relative minor. So if we're thinking of A flat minor or the minor modes, this would be our 4 chord, and it will be a 4 minor chord. So we've kind of shifted to the A flat minor territory here, and we'll look at the chord scale that's appropriate for that. Now we get to our diminished chord. I'm not going to analyze that just yet. I'm going to move on to this B flat minor 7, which is a 2 minor 7, 5 7 1. Again, very strong in the key of A flat, and then it brings us again to this secondary dominant, which brings us back to the top. So it's a 5-7 of 6. Now this diminished chord here, you know, diminished chords, it's all about where they're coming from and where they're going. Really, it's about where they're going, and it's going to a B flat minor 7 chord here. So when we listen to the B diminished and listen to the next chord, we'll notice there's only one note different, and that's the D here, the 5 of the dominant chord going to the D flat of the minor. So it's a very strong sound here. And what that is because it's chromatic motion here from the C to the B to the B flat, very strong motion with the bass here. We're going to call this a flat 3 diminished. And that's because it's going down, it's descending down from the third chord, the 3 chord, the 3 minor 7, flat 3, the B, or you could call it a C flat diminished 7, going to the 2. So it's very strong progression there. And again, we're going to get into the chord scale of what that is. You know, some people play symmetrical diminished stuff over this, but you know, these functional diminished chords definitely have their own chord scales, and we're going to get into that material. Alright, so once we've analysed this progression, we can now look at the different keys we're in. So we can see the first 5 bars here, F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7, D flat major 7, it's all A flat major harmony. Then we move keys for 3 bars to C major. So we've gone from A flat major for 5 bars to C major for 3 bars. Now we move on to the next 5 bars, which is all in the key of E flat major. And then again we shift keys to G major. Now we have this 5 to 1 for 3 bars, and then we have a 2-5-1 for 4 bars in G. So really we're staying on the key of G here for 7 bars. Now moving on to this F sharp minor 7. That's the key of E flat major for 3 bars. And then we have this secondary dominant that takes us back into A flat major. So we're A flat major here for another 4 bars. Then we have this modal interchange chord, and I'm thinking A flat Aeolian for this. And then we're back to the 3 chord, which is definitely in the key of A flat major. Then this functional diminished, so I'm still thinking A flat major here. And then we have our 2-5-1 at the end here, going to our secondary dominant to take us back to the top. So we have key of A flat here, C major, G major, E major, back to A flat major, and then back to the top. So now let's get into some of these chord scales. Okay, I'm going to use the whiteboard here, and we're going to first talk about this C7, flat 9, flat 13. So what we want to do first is we want to spell out the chord. So we have a C, E, G and B flat. There's our chord tones. And what we want to do is kind of fill in the gaps with notes from the A flat major scale, because we're kind of in A flat major, so the chord is gravitating towards that tonality. So the way we do it is we just basically fill in the gaps with diatonic notes to the A flat major. And there's going to be some exceptions, and we're going to talk about them when we come to them. So we're going to start with A flat, B flat, C as our chord tone. Next we have a D flat, okay, E flat, E natural, F and G. Now it's an 8-note scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and now let's analyze the degrees. So this is actually called an A flat, because we're in the key of A flat, we're going to call it an A flat chord scale. So it's A flat, Ionian, add, sharp, 5. Okay, now that add sharp 5 is important. We're not replacing the 5, we're adding the sharp 5. And that's because E here is part of our chord C7. Alright, and the reason why we have an E flat as well is because we have a D flat here, which is our flat 9, and if we have a flat 9 on a dominant chord, we also can have the sharp 9. So that's what's going on here. We have our flat 9, the D flat, and our E flat, which is basically an enharmonic of the sharp 9. So we have our root, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F and G. It's all A flat Ionian, and we're just adding this sharp 5 here because it's part of the chord tones for C7, flat 9, flat 13. The A flat of course gives us our flat 13. So that's basically how you spell out these secondary dominant chord scales. So 5, 7 of 6 is Ionian add sharp 5. Okay? And this is going to be really important when we start adding vocabulary to this progression. You know, we're going to use this as our scale to pick notes from. Alright, now let's get into the diminished chord. The B diminished, and we've analysed it as flat 3 diminished. So I'm going to write up the B diminished 7 here. And again, I'm going to spell out the chord B, D, F, A flat, or G sharp, but we're in a key of A flat, so I'm going to keep it as an A flat. And again, you know, we're going to start the scale from A flat, because that's our key. And again, we're going to fill in the gaps here. So we have A flat, B flat, B natural, that's our chord tone, C, D, E flat, F, G, and then back to A flat. And again, these diminished scales, for the most part, have 8 notes. So when we analyze it there, we'll see that in relationship to A flat, we'll notice that it's A flat, B flat, C, D flat, so it's kind of a Lydian sound there. So it's an A flat Lydian, because I raised 4th degree here, that's part of the B diminished chord, so that's why we have a D here and not a D flat. So it's a Lydian, so it's A flat, Lydian, add, sharp 2. And there's our B natural there. So we have 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's A flat Lydian, and we're adding the sharp 2, which is the B, which is of course part of the B diminished 7. Alright, so I'm now going to move on to actually playing some material over this tune, and then you can hear how these chord scales really function.